They defy belief, yet thousands swear to their existence.
It looked kind of like an ape. It was about, I'd say, a good 10 feet tall.
They are echoes of the past, yet their tracks have been detected by modern science.
People realize that with the amount of evidence there is, that there's a chance that this mystery may be solved in time.
They are legend brought to life. They are Sasquatch.
Beyond what is known lies an unexplored world of shadows and phantoms. A land that knows no limits of time or space. From the dawn of discovery to the nightfall of catastrophe. Journey to a universe of the unexplained, the unforeseen, the unbelievable. A place where myth and legend are law, superstition a science. A place beyond reality, where no question will go unanswered. Travel to a world of secrets and mysteries.
It's time for our journey to begin. You walk through our forests, yet you remain a mystery. What are you? Why do you hide? In the land we call wilderness, there lives a creature that has become one with legend. At the moment, it's about to have an unpleasant encounter with the self-styled masters of the wilderness, man. You have just seen a typical sighting of a magnificent animal with a ridiculous name, Bigfoot. I think it deserves a name more in keeping with its character. Sasquatch. Since the early 1800s, the creature has been reported all across North America. But it has also been seen all across the world. Similar animals have been seen in the Himalayas, where they're called Yeti, or the abominable snowman. There's a theory that they came to North America by the same land bridge traversed by the Indians. This land is called the Pacific Northwest. A man or an entire town could easily be absorbed into this expansive wilderness. This single forest covers a huge area, and even today, maps are incomplete. Here, time not only stands still, it doesn't exist. And here is where Sasquatch makes its home.
Well, I'd loaded 2 loads of logs out that morning, and I looked out towards the timber, and I saw this movement.
And I stood and watched, and from around behind a big tree, there was a black deal looking at me, and it had a peaked, pointed head.
As I recall, I brightened my headlights to get a better view of it, and I started slowing down. I started to hit the brakes. And then all of a sudden it started to move, and I thought, my Lord, the tree's going to come across the road.
And as this moved away, there was vine maples there that were pretty high, and I could see these broad shoulders and just kind of a nub, a suggestion of a head.
He was standing upright, and his arms like was hanging down the side of him, and he looked between a man and a beast.
I swung my arm in a big arc, and I said, I yelled out, "Hi, Sasquatch, come on down."
It looked kind of like an ape. I mean, an ape in sort of humanoid in structure. It was about, I'd say, a good 10 feet tall. That's the reason why I thought it was a tree.
Bigfoot is Gigantopithecus, and it's still here.
Sightings like those are almost too numerous to catalogue. But they all agree on certain physical characteristics. Standing between 5 and 8 feet tall, Sasquatch weighs between 500 and 800 pounds. Covered in brown, red, or black fur, it is apparently a vegetarian, although occasionally the creature varies its diet by eating small woodland animals. By all reports, it is shy, gentle, and avoids contact with humans at all costs. And it has other unusual characteristics.
Several people who have been close to a Bigfoot have reported this tremendous odor. I might mention something else, and that is sounds. The only sounds that we've been able to pick up out of all these reports that seem to be real are very powerful whistling noises. And I talked with an anthropologist once, and it was determined that one of the most penetrating sounds in dense forest is a whistle. It's a sound which will carry furthest. And so, although this is a very large creature, and it might seem a little ridiculous to think of it whistling, it could be a form of communication.
This is the mark of Sasquatch, taken from a set of tracks that covered a 5-mile stretch of dense forest. The depth of each print indicates that whatever made it weighed 800 pounds. 800 pounds. And there's other, more dramatic evidence. On a hot afternoon in October, Roger Patterson and a friend were riding through some woods in northern California. Suddenly their horses shied. They looked ahead and saw something squatting by the creek. As the creature ambled away, Patterson took this film that has been analyzed, debated, and contested ever since. What did Roger Patterson see that afternoon? If this film is not a hoax, then it's a very important scientific discovery, and we need to examine it in more detail. What was it that Roger Patterson photographed that October afternoon? Is this Sasquatch, or a cleverly executed hoax? Let us look closer. The key to this film's credibility is the way the animal walks. A man could not duplicate this peculiar gait. The human body isn't built that way. And that leaves just one explanation. This is Sasquatch.
If somebody was inside of an ape suit, trying to imitate that, the shoulders are hopelessly too wide. There's no way you can put a man inside of a monkey suit and get the Patterson film unless you broke his arms in the middle of the upper arm and put a new hinge there.
Grover Krantz is a contradiction in terms. He's a man of science, yet he believes in Sasquatch, and that's not a popular viewpoint.
I don't really blame the scientific community, since they have so many silly things to dispose of, for being dubious of the Sasquatch. I think, however, rather than denying the Sasquatch, they ought to simply say they don't know.
There is obviously a scientific debate. and also a human dimension to this search, a personal element that has become a way of life to a man called Peter Byrne.
My interest in Bigfoot grew out of original interest and work on the Yeti, or abominable snowman of the Himalaya. I think the main reason why people are interested in the Bigfoot mystery is because it's one of the last great mysteries of this diminishing world of ours. We have the Loch Ness monsters, we have flying saucers, if you like, a few things like that, and we have Bigfoot. And I think also people realize that with the amount of evidence there is, that there's a chance that this mystery may be solved in time. But when you think of it, when you think of the possibility of a prehistoric man living in the forest of the Pacific Northwest, there's a tremendous amount of attraction in that. It arouses enormous curiosity in people. They want to know who or what the thing is, and I think that's where the interest lies.
Byrne has never seen Sasquatch, but he's gathered evidence, and he believes it exists.
I think they do. I think that the evidence does support the existence of a few. I've had a certain advantage. I've had the time to be able to do 10 years of research, which is more than a lot of people. And I've seen a lot of evidence. I've seen historical evidence, I've seen footprints, and then I've been able to look into the eyes of sane, sensible, rational people who say they've seen one. And so as far as I'm concerned, I think that a few of them do exist in the forests of the Pacific Northwest.
So what is Sasquatch? One of the difficulties in coming to a conclusion is that there are so many similar stories of strange animals in the woods. One of the most unusual of these tales comes from New Jersey. This is the Pine Barrens, an aptly named wilderness spanning hundreds of miles across southern New Jersey in the United States. For 200 years, reports of a strange animal have been circulating, and nobody has been able to identify what it could be.
The Jersey Devil has been around since 1735, and it's a legend which is as strong today as it ever has been. And of course, being a devil or a demon tends to take on many different sizes, shapes, and descriptions, and altogether it's probably done more than Bigfoot, Loch Ness monster all put together.
In 1909, many eyewitnesses saw a creature that was huge, mysterious, elusive. Sasquatch.
During this period in January, thousands of people saw the Jersey Devil or his footprints. Posses formed to chase him. Rewards were offered. Many people locked themselves up in fear and stayed in their home.
These sightings have persisted for centuries, and though no physical evidence exists, the legend refuses to die.
A lot of credible witnesses have seen it. They've seen this strange thing. Sometimes the people will even say, I don't know exactly what it was, but it's something that's definitely out of the ordinary.
Sightings and second-hand reports of Sasquatch can only take us so far. We must look at the world through his eyes. Let your imagination roam through this wilderness. You have known the forest as your only home. Its rhythms are your rhythms, your life. You are alone, knowing few of your kind. For you are Sasquatch. You are legend. You and your kind have lived here forever. But there are strangers in your forest, and they bring danger. You've tried to hide, but you can only hide so long. Time is running out. The forest grows smaller every day. You're weary. state of undeclared war exists in some parts of the Pacific Northwest. Organized posses patrol the backwoods looking for a Bigfoot to blast down. This vigilante mentality has led to a law in the books in Skamania County in the state of Washington. Anyone convicted of killing a Sasquatch will be fined $10,000 and put in jail.
The only way that we can establish the existence of the Sasquatch positively is to produce a body, all or a significant part of one. This isn't just my idea. I've been told this by all of the skeptics, including the top authorities at the Smithsonian.
And until physical evidence is produced, the scientists are not about to say that it's real. They're not about to accept it, try and classify it.
This leaves us then with the only obvious alternative is for somebody to shoot one and bring in the body.
I've talked to people, two men, who say that they've seen one at close range, and they had a rifle, and they put the rifle on it, and one of them did intend to shoot. When he looked through the telescopic sight, he saw what he said was a human face, and it deterred him, and then the thing walked away. I don't think that, that shooting one would be justified in any way.
Science, at least, has a motive, but no motive can justify this.
If I was able to, I would shoot one, because I think it's very important to establish that these exist.
If it's there, we should know what it is, but if it's there, I think we'll eventually destroy it.
Oh, I think it's absolutely ridiculous because they just well shoot me to prove there's humanoids around here.
Until someone literally brings one in, there is no absolute proof that these animals exist.
Well, I certainly think that it would be worth every once in a while if it could be tranquilized. I see no necessity in killing it.
It's natural to be afraid of things you don't know about, and the more you learn about Bigfoot, the more you realize that he's just kind of curious. He wants something to eat, of course.
It's like the Titanic. They found it, and some say leave it, and some say go get it.
I think there ought to be some way they'd have a right to capture him, if they have to shoot him and cripple him or something to get him, or whatever it takes to capture him, because I'm positive he's out there.
This tragedy has not occurred, yet. Sasquatch still lives among us, but for how long? Man has a lamentable record for showing compassion for that which he fears, and he fears Sasquatch.
In our records and in our research, we never saw any sign of aggression of any kind, any sign of danger. And I think that if the number of incidents that we were able to record are all true, here we had a large primate that was in the vicinity of camps that had children and young people, and if these things were vicious, if they were antagonistic, I think by now there'd be some record.
To the best of my knowledge, the Sasquatch is not dangerous to humans. There have been a number of accounts of them taking some threatening activity towards humans, but most of these threatening stories usually have something wrong with them in some other aspect of the story.
No, if they're here, they've always been here, and they've always been here in good numbers. And of course, every year we hear of a certain number of people being killed by bears. We never hear of anyone being killed by Sasquatch.
What will happen now? Life or death? The choice is entirely ours, and the forest stands still, waiting in silence for our decision. There's an ability about this creature that the Indians recognized. They turned Sasquatch into legend, into a god of sorts. We too should celebrate the existence of a living wonder like Sasquatch, not drive it deeper into isolation. legend.
The producer's purpose is not to validate any side of an issue, but through the use of actualities and dramatic recreation, relate a possible answer, but not the only answer, to this material.
They have been feared, burned, and mostly misunderstood.
We went underground after 9 million people were burned, hanged, and tortured.
They can journey to the darkness, where good and evil can become one.
It's often been said that the gods of the old become the devils of the new. In actual fact, witches don't even believe in the devil, let alone worship him.
They were born in an age when magic was a religion, and they live among us today. They are witches.
Beyond what is known lies an unexplored world of shadows and phantoms. A land that knows no limits of time or space. From the dawn of discovery to the nightfall of catastrophe. Journey to a universe of the unexplained, the unforeseen, the unbelievable. A place beyond reality where no question will go unanswered. A place where myth and legend are law, superstition a science.
It's time for our journey to begin. You stand at the crossroads between superstition and reality. You are witches. Knowledge surrounds these library walls. And with these instruments, that knowledge can be ours. When some of us imagine a witch, we think of a cloaked hag huddled over a boiling pot filled with unspeakable ingredients, or flying through the night upon a broomstick. That image, alas, is far from the truth. To discover what a witch really is, we must journey back to an ancient time when magic was a way of life, and the gods battled for the hearts and minds of humanity. Time is running out. The ways of the old gods were no longer the ways of the people. The wise priests knew that their magic was no longer welcome. So on that last Hallows Eve, they came to this spot where the moon touched the earth to put their magic to rest. The secrets that had been spoken loudly so the world could hear would now be whispered, for a new god had risen, and his priests would not tolerate the old ways. It was somehow appropriate that they should consign their tools to the soil, for the gods had taught them to venerate the ground, the sky, and they would protect the knowledge until the time was right to rise again. But the whispers would rustle through the dark forests, the silent rivers, the ways of the Wicca would never be forgotten. Their beliefs would live on, their descendants known as witches. Do what thou wilt, and let it hurt none. This is the credo of many modern witches, witches whose rituals take many different forms. There are 4 basic kinds of witches: hereditary, traditional, Gardnerian, and Alexandrian. Hereditary witches have kept the traditions of magic alive through their families for thousands of years, quietly behind closed doors. Traditional witches pay close attention to preserving historical rituals from Europe, though they can be found the world over. Gardnerian witches take their name from the studies of Gerald Gardner, an English witch and author who died in 1964. Another personality-driven cult is the Alexandrian, named for a modern English witch who emphasized ceremony and codified ritual. Because of their persecution, very little about how witchcraft began has been recorded. This shadowy past has done much to perpetuate stereotypes, but as is often the case, those cliches do have some basis in reality. For example, some witches still use a broomstick during their meetings, called covens, not to fly, but for ceremony.
The broomstick is frequently associated with witches. They were thought to ride through the air on their broomstick going to the Sabbath site. And this is a distortion of what actually happened in the early days. There was a time of year when the village people would go down to the fields and they would take along with them broomsticks and they would ride astride them like on a hobby horse. And as they danced around, they would jump up in the air. And they felt that the higher they jumped, the higher the crops would grow, is what we would call sympathetic magic.
Another popular witch cliché is the cauldron, bubbling with unspeakable ingredients. In actuality, the cauldron has a far more palatable origin.
The cauldron was used in the early days when witches came from miles around to gather at the Sabbath sites to celebrate the main festivals. And they would bring with them the food that they wanted to eat, having traveled some distance. And they would cook it in a big cauldron over a fire set up before getting down to the religious side of things. This is where the cauldron came to be associated with witches.
The misconceptions surrounding witchcraft are legion, and modern-day witches are attempting to set the record straight.
The most upsetting misconceptions are that witches are Satanists and that we worship Satan or the devil. And witches don't have any Satan or any devils or demons in their belief structure.
People assume that witches are going to do something bad or wrong or hurt them. I have no desire to hurt anybody. That's not part of my life.
Our motto is, as it harm none, do as ye will. Witches don't believe in harming any living thing.
Witches look like everybody else looks. They're human beings. They're going to have your general yuppie look, your Gucci skirt, your fashion plate, your dungarees. Often, many witches who work in the bank will wear black most of the time, and no one really knows the difference because right now it's very fashionable.
Within witchcraft, there are no 10 commandments, there's no catechism or anything like that. There's just one law, and that law is, and it harm none, do what thou wilt. This basically means that you can do anything you like so long as you harm no one else. And this is really the only law that we find that we need.
One of the most startling facts about witches is that there are more of them today than ever before. Their rituals have remained unchanged for thousands of years, though they have adapted to our modern world in occasionally surprising and shocking ways. These are witches' tools. Innocent in appearance, mysterious in function, they're easily purchased in many places. They only become powerful when used as ritualistic tools to summon and control powers beyond our wildest dreams or nightmares.
Hail, Aradia, goddess of the east, powers of air. We invoke you and call upon you. By the breath that is her spirit, send forth your light.
We are not in medieval Germany, nor hidden in the bowels of some castle in England. No, this is Woodland Hills, California in the United States. And these are modern-day witches. This coven gathers together often and follows the procedures passed down through the ages. Here they prepare to consecrate the earth, for this is a time of joining, of becoming, and of singing.
We all come from the goddess, and to her we shall return. There's so much energy and love that goes around, that comes out of the voices, and even those of us who can't carry a tune to save our life sound great. And you feel that love there, you know, in yourself and in your friends. That's what singing does for me anyway.
These arcane ceremonies can take on many different forms, but they all share one thing in common: symbolic magic achieved by archaic ritual empowered by modern-day belief.
The idea of sympathetic magic is that like attracts like, so that, like in our society, we think of money as being green. If you want to draw money to you, you would use a green candle. Or you'd make up a little herbal amulet of herbs that are associated with the monetary planets like Jupiter or something like that. And you'd put those herbs together and sew them up into a green sack that you would carry with you, and that kind of thing.
Some modern-day witches argue that ritual needs to adapt to the times, to take on a more contemporary guise. But as in anything, tradition is hard to cast aside. And to some people, the rewards are worth the risks of ridicule.
It's something that brings out the best in me. It's really hard to describe how I feel in circle and how I feel afterwards. It's kind of like runner's high, really. Feel it flowing around through the hands joined together.
The old ways die hard. Some of the symbols and ceremonies associated with witchcraft have survived virtually unchanged for thousands of years, dating back to an age when magic was a science. In some ways, magic is a state of mind. Through the use of objects and symbols such as these, witches can focus their psychic energies upon any target they choose. These objects are props, if you will, in a strange form of mental theater. Now, most modern-day witches consider themselves to be white or good magicians, though black magic can be practiced as well, and these dark practices have done much to cloud mass perception. Magic can be practiced anytime, but on the 8 annual days of gathering called Sabbats, it can be particularly potent. One of the most notorious of these Sabbats takes place on All Hallows Eve, October 31st. We know that day as Halloween, and mark it by following an ancient tradition. In medieval times, fearful peasants would place lit candles inside carved gourds to frighten away marauding witches, a habit that has passed down to today's decorative pumpkins. Black magic and the fear it inspires has led to witches being on the defensive for centuries. That's an understatement when one considers the great witch hunts that took place in the late 15 and early 1600s. Many of those unfortunates accused of being witches were actually persecuted for darker reasons. And the more we understand those reasons, the less chance there is of witch hunts occurring again. This book, written in medieval times, is called the Malleus Maleficarum, or Witch's Hammer. It's a step-by-step guide into the world of hysteria. It shows in gruesome detail the ways to extract confessions from accused witches. And in these trials by torture, there's no such thing as innocence, only degrees of guilt. In the late 1500s in Europe, a wave of hysteria swept the land. Organized religion felt that the ways of the Wicca were a grave threat to their belief systems, and the pulpit became a platform for the denunciation and then extermination of anyone suspected of consorting with the old gods.
In Europe, especially during the Middle Ages, when schisms racked the church, there was a move to purify the church from within. And there were many investigations, the Inquisition and so forth. So for centuries in Europe, there had been tremendously brutal witch hunts, and church leaders conducted these. This went on in England as well.
The New World was not immune to these insanities, and in 1692, in the town of Salem in Massachusetts in the United States, the worst of the Old World corrupted the New.
There had been incidents of witchcraft in New England for a 50-year period preceding the hysteria of 1692. But when the hysteria broke out in Salem, it was much more dramatic in terms of numbers and the degree of panic.
This panic began innocently. A group of bored schoolgirls amused themselves by dabbling in black magic taught to them by a West Indian slave. This experiment soon got out of control.
In the winter, people were pretty well confined to their homes, and teenagers had very little to do, especially young women. However, they found some entertainment in talking to Tituba, who was a West Indian, and in fact she taught them some charms and pretended, I think, to read their futures and so on. Of course, they were caught and were asked whether they had been signed on, if you will, as Satan's own, and they said yes.
These confessions soon ignited the flame of hysteria, unprecedented in the Americas. Neighbor turned against neighbor, making ludicrous and unsubstantiated charges that were nevertheless accepted at face value. Soon the courts were busy trying, torturing, condemning.
When the summer was over, 19 people had been hanged. One man had been crushed to death because he would not speak, crushed to death under stones that were placed on his chest. They were called firebrands of hell. And because of this, they were denied burial. Their bodies were flung down Gallows Hill and left for animals to devour.
Soon the fever burned itself out. In all, 24 men and women lost their lives. Salem still remembers its dark past, though some say the full impact of the horror has diminished with time.
I think what I have the most trouble with is the trivialization of injustice. When you see witch key rings and wall plaques on sale virtually everywhere in Salem, it's a little difficult to swallow. I feel it's more like selling Indian feathers at Wounded Knee or ashes in vials at Dachau. I find no humor, I find no eeriness, I find only horror.
Today, witchcraft arouses interest and some suppressed fear, but it is hardly viewed as a direct threat to anyone. Its converts feel that rather than a threat, it's a powerful force for good, literally changing the world for the better. There was a time when magic was taken for granted, its power accepted in much the same way as we accept electricity. The world has grown more complex since those innocent times, and today, man is detached from the mystic world, viewing it as an object of ridicule, even entertainment.
I think there will always be places where witches are not accepted, and I would hope that the places in which witches are accepted would become larger.
Witchcraft, although it's what might be thought of as an ancient religion, is actually very relevant to the present. It ties in very much with the ecological movement, with the women's rights movement, and because of this, it's become very, very popular.
We are people, we are families, we are men and women and children. The misconceptions go on and on and on, and of course we take responsibility for that. And that's what we are trying to do now, help people to understand us so that we are not the disposal for the ills of the earth. Because if they're looking for evil in us, they're looking in the wrong place.
These men and women who can so easily sail into the mystic world are not to be feared. They are to be understood, for they may have knowledge that can benefit us all, helping us to comprehend the boundaries of our real world a little more fully. The ancient ways live on. Your gods still exist as long as you believe. Witches, echoes of a magical past.
Secrets and Mysteries presents information based in part on theories and opinions, some of which are controversial. The producer's purpose is not to validate any side of an issue, but through the use of actualities and dramatic recreation, relate a possible answer, but not the only answer, to this material.